Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be looking at the 921 support tier list. So as always, if you enjoy the content, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really does help out a ton. Check out the rest of the content on the channel as well. We've been streaming every night starting around 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We've been going till about 2 and 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time every night. Been getting a ton of people out there, so I really appreciate that. So come by, check it out. It's very conversational. It's fun. It's a chill community. We'd love to have you. So come by, check that out, and the rest of the guides on the channel as well, and other content. Be sure to look at that. So we're going to have other tier lists, patch notes, coaching sessions, individual champion guides, topical guides, all sorts of great content on there. So be sure to take a look at all that if you enjoy this. And I will have timestamps in the description as well, and I'll have a link to this Google Doc. Now, I will say that this is going to have to be faster than most of my usual tier lists because I do want to get this out today. I know a lot of people want to hear about it, so I'm going to try a faster format. I know that's a bit of a meme on this channel, but let me know what you think about this in the comments, and I will have to put in the timestamps and the Google Doc later because I have to run off to school here in about 20 minutes or so. So I'm going to have the video up for you. It's going to post. It's not going to have a thumbnail. It's not going to have the timestamps right away, but I will add this in later tonight when I get back from all the student conferences that I have to attend. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here though. And when you do get the Google Doc, if you click on it here, I guess I can have the Google Doc on release can be linked there, but I just won't have the thumbnail and the timestamps. But I can have the Google Doc, I suppose, linked. So I have a 1 to 5 rating scale here. 1 means that the champion is one of the worst at that task for the support role. 5 means the champion is one of the best. So lane pressure is how likely can the champion get priority. Kill threat is how likely is the champion going to be able to get a kill in the laning phase. Safety is how likely is the champion able to survive ganks and position well, particularly in the early game. Scaling is how well does the champion perform over time. And then reliability is how likely is it that someone can play well on this champion over numerous games. So part of that is how difficult is the champion to play in terms of decisions and mechanics, but also how well does the champion fit into the meta. So are there a lot of counter picks? Does the champion work well with a lot of other champions that are popular and powerful right now in the meta? And then recommended runes, recommended items. Okay, so not a ton has changed since the last patch. I did talk about this a little bit, I believe, in the last support tier list, which is that I think you need to be roaming a lot more in this meta. And in the past, I've been a little bit critical of that because I've said that puts your bot lane at risk and you're sort of taking a chance on being able to make a play middle. But it's pretty much guaranteed that your AD carry is going to fall behind. And frankly, in most elos, that your AD carry is probably going to die if you leave bottom. But I've sort of reversed my position on that in this meta because I think that the bot lane is so bad right now, particularly AD carries, that it's actually worth, even if you can give your mid laner a slight edge, even if you don't get a kill for him, if you're just zoning out the enemy mid laner or you're getting their flash, or you're just applying a lot of extra pressure there, then I think that's worth it even for your AD carry to fall behind a lot of the time, depending on the mid laners and such. But I just feel like most games are won by mid laners or junglers, sometimes top laners, but it's very rarely like the AD carry, hard carries a failing top lane and mid lane. Sometimes it happens, but I think that mid and jungle are going to be the two most powerful positions. And whenever you are roaming like that, the default for most bot lanes is they just kind of aggressively power push to try to make up for the fact that you roamed. So if you roam middle as Rakan, for example, the enemy bot lane, if they are, I don't know, something like Leona, Kaisa, they're going to push forward and try to punish your AD carry for you roaming. Now, they might kill your AD carry, and let's be real, they probably will, but they're also going to push up too far a lot of the times. And so even if you just create that pressure middle, you force the enemy mid laner to back and blow their flash, you can rotate down to bottom with your mid laner, or maybe even your jungler too, if your jungler's there, and then you can pile onto their bot lane and get some kills bottom. So it sort of opens up opportunities not only in the mid lane, but also in the bot lane because of these rotations. So I still think that's going to be the best strategy. So things that can rotate over and get mobility boots and make plays fairly early on in the game, I think are going to be at a huge advantage because so many games are decided by 15 minutes. if not by a literal surrender vote, then sort of metaphorically by the 8-0 mid laner or something on one of the teams. So I think that, for those reasons, you need to play something that's heavy roam, has heavy playmaking potential, particularly in the mid lane. And just really those qualities above all else are, I think, what's going to be really important. So the meta is still, for a lot of people and a lot of elos, it's still going to be 4-camp bot lane the entire time. So if you don't roam around like that, then their mid laner is probably going to get priority on yours, and they're going to roam down and dive you bot tower with the jungler. So unless you're proactive, unless you're forcing their mid laner to be in a defensive mindset to play scared, then their mid laner is going to come to you. So you kind of have to choose. Are you going to go to them? Are you going to take the fight to them? Are you going to have the element of surprise? Are you going to have the vision control and try to make plays? Or are you just going to, kind of be a victim and hang out in the bot lane and just hope and pray that your mid laner can keep enough priority to keep their mid laner from sitting on you bot lane? So you're kind of putting your fate in your mid laner's hand or in your jungler's hand without really taking an active role in that. If you're not actively trying to go and make these plays. So yeah, the 4-camp bottom wins a lot of the time. They're just really weak laners right now still with the Ezreal, Kai'Sa, and Vayne. Now this trend is reversing a little bit. You're seeing a bit more things like Jhin. You're seeing Lucian start to come back a little bit. Caitlyn's definitely coming back. So people are starting to realize, I don't know. I've seen Ezreal fall off for sure. But I'm still seeing a lot of tier Kai'Sas, and Vayne's fallen off a little bit. But you still see her occasionally. But Kai'Sa, the tier Kai'Sa, is still very pernicious. It's out there, and it's rough. So this trend is reversing a little bit, but it's still there where the ADCs are going to be weak early. You're still seeing the double assassin comps. Then those hard engage comps, like I mentioned, are going to be really strong. Okay. So I bumped Rakan back up near the top after playing with a bunch of different champs this week. So be sure to check out, the past recordings of the stream because I have been trying out a bunch of different stuff. Not to much avail, I think we've probably gone about 50-50 on the, week or two since we've done the last tier list. But I have learned a couple of things that hopefully I can share with you here. I think that Rakan is still going to be the best after trying everybody out. They did nerf Pyke a little bit this patch, and we'll talk about that here in a second. I still think that he is going to be really good, but Rakan just has such utility. We've mentioned before the fact that he can help protect not just your AD carry, but really a bunch of different champions out there, while he can also be one of the best engaged champions. Just gives him a very unique kit. The fact that his shield is so strong and deceptively strong. I mean, a 280, if you shield somebody twice with a 1.6 AP ratio is massive. That's bigger than any other, standard enchanter shield out there other than, a Karma Empowered E. It's very big. You can split it amongst different people. It gives you basically 2 dashes. So it's just really, really strong for an enchanter capability. And then the Grand Entrance is still pretty good too because you can do it through minion waves. In theory, it can hit multiple people as well as far as CC goes. It's a knock-up, so they can't reduce it with tenacity. It also plays very well with champions like Yasuo, who are really strong right now. So that's handy. And then it's the fact that he has some sustain in the laning phase with basically his Fae Feathers is pretty much sustain. It's like a heal every time it's up. And then you get the Gleaming Quill, which is not insane. It's one of the weaker spells out there for the laning phase. But for 1 point, it can heal you up a little bit. It can heal your ally up a little bit. So it's not amazing, but it is something. Some of these champions out here like Leona and Nautilus, it's very difficult for them to respond to really heavy poke early on. So if you're against something like a Xerath or a Vel'Koz or something like that, and a Jhin, then you can get poked out pretty early on. But Rakan has a little bit of resistance to that. And really, one of the strongest things that I think really goes unappreciated with Rakan is his itemization. It's so good. It's so flexible. I really like coin on Rakan because that allows you to roam around the map faster. It allows you to, because remember, it gives you the 10 movement speed at rank 2. Usually gives you your wards about 5 minutes faster than something like Spell Thieves or even Relic Shield out there. And This gives you a ton of gold as the game goes on, and that allows you to complete items, and he's very, very good with items because he has such flexibility, and he can get most of the powerful items out there. So he can get Redemption, he can get Ardent if he wants to. He can also go with a more defensive setup if he wants to go for something like Knight's Vow and Zeke's. That's fine too. So he's very flexible. Zeke's is a really powerful item on him, so it does give him that survivability that he needs, but it also increases the DPS of his AD carry. Gives him an extra slow so he can stick with people, or stick to people rather. And so he's just really, really good with that item in general. And then just the fact that he can go for his second item, he can go for anything from like an Athene's, just to give him a little bit of extra magic resist, a little bit of extra AP, which he's really good with, and that extra bit of shielding or healing that applies to his shielding with Battle Dance is really nice. Or you can do Redemption for team fights, or you can do Knight's Vow if they have a really fed like AD assassin, or if your team, if they have a lot of magic damage and your team just really needs like an instant burst shield, you can do Locket. That's a little bit more rare, but it's possible. So there's just so many different options you can do with him, that I think that's what makes him really strong, is he can adapt, he can play around different champions, he can itemize to adjust to the game state better than pretty much any other support out there. And that's why I've kind of got him in the top spot here. And so the runes that you want with him, you pretty much always want Guardian. It just works so well with his E. The extra movement speed is huge. Also, people forget it does give you that burst of movement speed. So that's great for your AD carries. That's also great for you, so that you can rotate around, tag more people more comfortably with your R. So it gives you a lot of options there. Demolish, I would take most of the time. Shield Bash is okay, I guess. It does give you some extra resistances. But Demolish is just so good because you're able to get that extra tower plate, puts extra gold in your pocket, adds extra pressure to lanes. Especially if you're roaming around. If you force the flash mid lane and they have to back, and you go in with your mid laner, you're probably going to get an extra plate, which once again, good gold in their pocket, good pressure. So I just really like Demolish. I think it pays off. Even if you only get like 2 or 3 extra plates during the laning phase because of Demolish, it's definitely worth it. And then the Bone Plating tree, this one's the most variable. Bone Plating you want to take if you're against other all-in lanes. So if you're against, Leona or Nautilus, you probably want that early. If it's something where you can wait a while and they're going to have some very heavy assassins later on, then you could consider going for conditioning. And if you're against a very heavy poke lane, then you can still go for Second Wind. If you're against like a Zyra or Lux, Vel'Koz, Xerath, stuff like that, then you can still go Second Wind and then take something like Athene's early or Mercury Treads early so that you get that Null Magic Mantle to give you some extra protection. And then I really like the Presence of Mind, Legend Tenacity. I think a lot of pro players have been going for this. You can still go for like the Nimbus Cloak Celerity or Nimbus Cloak Transcendence if you want to. This really comes down to Presence of Mind gives you a lot of extra ults, usually like up to 1 full extra ult per game in terms of cooldowns, sometimes more than that. Versus Nimbus Cloak is going to give you a higher quality ult because you're going to have more movement speed so that you can potentially tag more people with your ult every time you ult, or you can more safely get out before they kill you because you're going to have better movement speed. So it's really down to quality or quantity, and I think in lower elo brackets I'd rather just have the quantity. I'd rather have more chances to make plays and just really snowball the game early on. So it's up to you. But I think that smart players come down on both ends of the spectrum there in terms of Nimbus Cloak versus Presence of Mind. So I think you really can't go wrong there. And then just Nomads, and most of the time you want to go Mobies unless they have just a ridiculous amount of CC and you need Mercs, or they just have like some really dangerous assassins, or they're all AD and you want to go Ninja Tabby. But usually Mobies are where you want to be. And then I like Coin. Some top-end players will go Spell Thieves, but unless you're getting kills or forcing really favorable backs for you, with the Spell Thieves, then I just wouldn't get it. It's going to delay your wards a ton. The damage really doesn't matter unless you're converting that to kills early on, and you're getting a lot less gold if the game for some reason does drag on to 30-35 minutes. Then you get so much more gold with Nomads that's just where I would be. Okay, so that's Rakan. Let's go ahead and move on. Pyke, I think, is still going to be really good. They did nerf his base stats a little bit, 10 extra health per level, and then they nerfed his regen. But after playing some Pyke, I can tell you, I don't think that it matters that much in most matchups. And I talked about this in the patch notes, but a lot of the most popular champions right now are going to be these all-in hard engaged champions. I mean, I'm not the only one who thinks most of what I'm saying about the meta, right? Tons and tons of other commentators, other supports, other pro players have been saying this type of thing for a while, that the meta is just so fast, pretty much too fast, and you have to have, most of the time hard engage, and you want to snowball really quickly in games. So if you look, a lot of the top end champions are going to be these all-in versions, right? You're going to have Blitzcrank, Nautilus, Leona. Now there are some differences, right? You're still getting some Janna and Soraka are creeping up there. Shaco, we'll talk about him in a little bit, is kind of getting up there. But a lot of it's still going to be all in, especially when we start thinking about popularity. If you look at the popularity and not just win rates, you're playing against Thresh, Nautilus, Blitz, and Leona, and Pyke most of the time, right? And everybody knows that who's been playing solo queue. So those champs just have a huge pick rate right now. So what that means is that the extra sustain really doesn't mean that much, that you're losing that in the laning phase, because you're not facing Zyras every game. You're not facing Xeraths, Vel'Kozes, things like that. And you can still take stuff like second wind with him if you really have to, right? So usually bone plating is what people get, but kind of like Rakan, you can adjust and take something like second wind if you really need to. I mean, if the situation's extreme enough, if they have a ton of AP on their team, you could even go for something like Mercury Treads if you need to. Although I think that that's a little more questionable on Pyke. You really, really want those mobility boots on Pyke. But you have options. And so I think that losing the little bit of extra health, losing the little bit of extra sustain in lane, I think is fine. He needed to be nerfed in one way or another. He was really strong. So I could even see an argument for this potentially being good for him if you enjoy Pyke, because he's probably going to get banned less. He's still banned quite a bit, but that may come down a little bit over time. So he's still going to be good, though. He can still go invisible. He still roams really quickly. He still gets massive advantages if you do get ahead, if you do get those kills. He still gets a ton of gold. I kind of wish if they wanted to nerf him, they would have nerfed the gold a little bit. But he's still going to snowball hard. He's got the invisibility. He's got the hook. He's very safe. That's the thing, too, is he has a really good engage, with his hook, with his E flash. But he also has multiple escapes with the invisibility, the speed, the dash. He has lots of potential to get out of situations. And his itemization is pretty good for a damage dealer, right? He's got the Dust Blade, which basically gives him an extra sweeper. He has Ghost Blade, which gives him some extra movement around the map. So unlike some other damage dealing supports out there, like your Brands and your Zyras, his items are going to be a bit cheaper than that. They're around 2,900 instead of the Brand and Zyra items. They're similar, but like Leandri's is going to be, I believe, 3,200 or 3,100. And the components are certainly much, much nicer. The fact that you can get a Dirk early on feels pretty good, with that extra lethality. And you can also get the CDR. Now, that's something that things like Zyra and Brand really can't get most of the time is CDR. But the lethality items do give the CDR, so that feels great. So, still going to be strong. You want to go Aftershock, Demolish, Bone Plating, Unflinching, Presence of Mind, and Legend Tenacity. Then just mobility boots whenever possible. Now, I like coin also on Pyke, and I've had people say, well, why not Relic Shield? The thing is, you don't get the extra HP off of Relic Shield because it just converts it over to AD. And yeah, the small little bit of AD does matter. It is helpful. But realistically, that's not going to make or break most fights, having an extra 3 AD or something like that. I would much rather have just the movement speed, the 10 movement speed off of that, and just get your wards faster. Just get wards, 3 to 5 minutes faster with those coins, and also snowball with your income a lot earlier, a lot faster, and just have a more reliable source of income so that you can get that second and third item a little bit faster. Then I would just go Dustblade, Ghostblade, definitely, almost always in that order. And then after that, you have a little bit of flexibility. Edge of Night's the other lethality item that can be good, but you could also go Guardian Angel. Some people ask me about Dead Man's Plate on him. I would not recommend Dead Man's Plate. I mean, maybe if they have a ton of physical damage and you're dying a lot, but realistically, you should be able to position better. and just go for more damage, because that's really where you need to be a lot of times with Pyke, because that's just how he's designed. The tank version has been nerfed a lot. So that's what I'd go for. So Pyke, still going to be a pretty strong champ. Nautilus is another one that I think is still going to be pretty good. The thing about Nautilus is just reliability on his engage. He's the most reliable engage out there right now, because you just press R with your ult, and unless they have Zanya's or some other type of stasis effect, they're going to get hit, and you're going to be able to make a play on them. And it has pretty good engage range. I think it's like somewhere around 850 engage range on the ult, so it's pretty far. And then he has a really fat hitbox on his hook, so it's very easy to land them. You can't throw it over walls, which kind of sucks. But open field, it is really easy to hit those. And you can use the hook to help you get around the map a little bit faster as well. So you can use it for mobility or to potentially get out of some sketchy situations. So that's really handy. And then he does like a lot of AoE damage in team fights. So if you're actually having 5v5 fights, just spamming that E can put up a pretty significant amount of damage for a support in team fights. And it also gives you really good wave clear, so that you can help get priority in your lane and rotate to grab scuttles or make plays middle or dragon or get deep wards in the jungle. There's just a lot of stuff you can do with priority, and he's one of the best champions at getting it, especially in the early game. And because when you use that ability, it's on a low cooldown, it does hit all of the minions to help push, but it's not really like a vital cooldown to have up 24/7. Rakan has okay wave clear if you use your W on the wave, but it's a pretty long cooldown early, and if someone sees you use that W, it's going to be a problem, right? They're going to hard engage on you. They're going to know you have this real window of vulnerability if you don't have your W. But with Nautilus, it's such a low cooldown on your E. You still have your hook. You still have your passive for the root. You still have your shield. So you're not really opening yourself up to too much vulnerability by using the E to help your AD carry push for the first couple of waves, so you can get scuttle priority. So anyways, I think that makes him positioned pretty well for this meta, and so I would still just go Aftershock, Font of Life. I'm kind of leaning a little bit more towards Demolish here. Then Bone Plating, Unflinching, and then Presence of Mind, Tenacity. And you still want to go Moby Boots. Now with him, you have to go Relic Shield. He does need the health early, and he doesn't have any other form of sustain. I've tried coin on him. You just can't do it. You got, unlike Leona and Nautilus, you gotta have the Relic Shield, you gotta have the health, just because they have to get in there, like, up close and personal. There's no way around it. With Thresh and Pyke, you can land hooks, and you can kind of pick your spots where you want to go in. You don't have to fully commit whenever you land the hook. With, like, Rakan, you can get out after you land. But with, like, Nautilus and Leona, when you go in, you really want to stay in and just keep applying that CC as much as possible. And it's hard for you to get back out, even if you want to, after you've already committed. So that's why I think that you kind of have to go for the Relic Shield. And then just Zeke's most of the time, Knight's Vow, Locket. You can go Ardent Censer if your team's really far ahead, if your AD carry has a ton of kills, but only do that if you go Font of Life early. And I've tried it out a couple of times as like a final item, and it's all right. Sometimes it matters, but realistically, most fights near the end of the game just comes down to who gets caught first. If you get a really good hook on one of their high priority targets, their AD carry, their mage, or whatever, you're probably going to win the fight regardless of whether you have Ardent Censer or not. So I think it's a little bit far out of your way to try to do something like that. It's a little too cute most of the time, but it can work out in some situations if you want to go for that Ardent Censer and you have a Fed Twitch or a Fed Jinx or something like that. But only do it if you take Font of Life. Okay. Leona's another one that I think is going to be pretty strong right now. The big thing about Leona that makes her unique from some other ones is that all of her abilities have threat through the minion wave, and she has a ton of CC, and her ult's on a low cooldown. So those are kind of her major claims to fame, are that you can always engage from any position of the wave, so you don't have to have that open line of sight there to land a hook, because you can E through the minion wave. So that makes her really scary for a lot of AD carries out there, particularly the immobile ones like the Jinxes, the Jins, stuff like that. Even the Caitlyn's, if she doesn't get her trap up in time and you land an E on her, she's probably going to die. And she does quite a bit of damage too. Like, her passive adds up quickly, does quite a bit of damage. And even in team fights, she can put up some decent damage because her W's AoE, her ult's AoE, The E potentially can tag multiple people. So she puts up some pretty respectable damage. And her ult's also on a 90-second cooldown, which is really nice. That gives you a lot of playmaking potential around the map. I mean, that's basically the equivalent of having like a free, fully stacked ulti hunter, just about, even more than that, on Leona versus even some of the other low cooldown ults out there like Nautilus. It's still going to be really, really effective. And it has a pretty long range. I think it's like 1100 range where you can land that ult. So it's a very useful ult. And just her chain stun, the only person who can match it is Nautilus, really, But she has lower cooldowns on her ability, so she can keep stunning, she can keep CCing, because her Q's on like a 5-second cooldown without any CDR. So realistically, a lot of times you can open with ult, E in, auto attack, reset your auto with Q, get that stun, and then you've got Zeke's ticking, so they're going to be slowed. And then, a lot of times just maybe 3 more seconds, and you can Q them again and get another stun off. And then by the time that stun finishes, your E's going to be off cooldown, so you can E them again. So you have just lower cooldowns and more CC over time than almost anybody else, and you have pretty good sustained burst damage. So what's the problem with Leona then? Well, the issue is she has like no safety whatsoever. Nautilus can at least get away somewhat, with his hook in some situations. Leona's not getting away. Nautilus meets him halfway in the middle. He hooks him and pulls him about halfway. Leona goes all the way over to them. So that makes you even more vulnerable. So, that's some of her potential problem. She's one of the riskiest hard engages out there because she is real hard engaged. Like, you are not getting out once you go in most of the time. You want to stay in there and fight. So, that's good. Now, she is very resilient, especially in the early game, to little chip damage. So, like, auto attacks, Zyra plants, Scorch, most of the runes. She just does not take damage when that W is up early. So they changed that a few patches ago. And that's really, really strong, particularly in the early game, when people don't have super hard-hitting abilities, and most of the damage is going to come from things like auto attacks and runes. So I think that positions her really well in this meta. So you got to be careful. You got to make sure you're not the one getting camped. But if you're actually the one able to do the roaming, able to get the priority, then she is really strong. She also doesn't have any wave clear, so to speak, or it's extremely weak, and you don't want to be using things like your E and your W for wave clear. You want to save those for combat. So you can't control the wave as much. It's less likely you're going to get priority as someone like Nautilus. But if you can make that happen, if you can scare the enemy and get them to back up, then you can potentially have opportunities to roam. Okay, and then Bard's one of the last ones that I'll mention in detail because I am running out of time here, so I do need to get going off to school. But Bard is, I've moved him up a little bit just because I've kind of learned in a meta where roaming is really like the top priority right now, that Bard is actually really good at that. That's one of his main things. So he does get around the map quickly. You're constantly going out getting chimes too, or not constantly, but you're looking for opportunities. So, sometimes your bot lane won't call MIA or the mid lane won't respect it, and you can get some good plays bottom because they might think you're just out getting some chimes. But he has a lot of uses. He can be very aggressive early if you do have an AD carry that's cooperating. With Electrocute, you can do a lot of burst damage. He's got the really good roam, like we mentioned before. That tunnel helps him zip around the map pretty quickly. He loves to get mobility boots early. He has a lot of base damage in his kit with the chimes, and base utility, like with his ult and with his tunnel, so you can comfortably get those mobility boots without missing out on other things. And that ult, they lowered the ult's cooldown a few patches ago to where it's only 110 seconds. You can make a lot of plays, and it's got some pretty good range on it, kind of like Leona. I mean, way further than Leona. But a lot of times you're using it at about Leona-esque type of range, right? Like 1,000 to 1,500 range to make plays. So that is pretty handy. It is useful. You can kind of catch people off guard by throwing it out of bushes and landing it. And realistically, if you land that most of the time, you're going to kill the person, or you're going to at least force a flash. So it's very similar to Leona's. It doesn't do damage, but it does have more utility, because you can save people from things like Karthus ults, Ignites, Zed ults, Fizz Fishes. It has the defensive potential as well as the offensive potential in the right circumstances. And if you land it on multiple people in a fight, sometimes it can even be better than Leona, depending on your team comp, because they're going to have time to set up and get just like the perfect engage, right? So you can have your Malphite just like ready to go as soon as they wake up, and it's boom, ultimal, or even just something simple like a Caitlyn just setting a trap down on a key target while they're stasis, or Jinx throwing chompers on them, or whatever. Can be really powerful. So I do think that he's good. He has unique itemization too, in that he can get a lot of item actives, and he can take Ingenious Hunter. So he can take things like Twin Shadows, Redemption, Shirelia's, Locket. You know, he does have the potential to take a lot of these things if he wants to. Twin Shadows is actually fairly standard on him, because you don't need mana regen, really, because your chimes give you back so much mana. And if you can land that slow on people with the Ghost, then it's virtually going to be guaranteed that you're able to hit your ult, unless they're one of the super mobile champions or they have flash. And that does help you scout out so that you don't die while you're trying to get chimes too. So he has some very interesting build paths, and he's one of the few champs that can comfortably itemize multiple item actives, which gives him more playmaking and makes Ingenious Hunter really appealing for him, which gives you more sweepers, more Vis control, and like I said, just more potentials to make plays with things like Twin Shadow. So Bard is very interesting right now. I think he can be very powerful. You just have to practice him. He's a bit weird, but I've been trying him out. I'm not great on him yet, but I can definitely see the potential. I can see how he's going to be good in some games out there. And then as far as tier 2, I think that Nami's still going to be pretty decent. You know, she is very aggressive early, so you can get priority. Her roaming is okay. It's not amazing, but if you do show up, you do have tools on the enemy lane. You know, your ult has pretty good range on it, so you can get people out of bushes. If you have a mid laner that has some kind of CC, they can chain with it. That can be good. And then just showing up and throwing your W down and your E, maybe hitting a bubble. She has a pretty good mixture of CC, some okay scaling, and just good utility overall. So she's one of the better roaming enchanters out there. And she does apply that lane pressure, so you kind of have multiple options in how you want to approach the game. And she's one of the best users in terms of Athenes, because that one ability, that W, does damage and heals in the same effect, or in the same ability. So that's really good for stacking your Athenes and distributing that heal all in one motion. So yeah, she's going to be great. And then you just want to go for still kind of the standard, you know, airy tree all the way down. And then you do have some options after that. Some people will go for kind of the bone plating revitalize, but if you're roaming a lot, I could definitely see going domination for Taste of Blood plus Relentless Hunter, and that can help you out a lot with your roams. So it's just kind of up to you where you want to go with that. The bone plating is very nice if you're against hard engage in the lane, but other than that, she can be pretty solid. Now Frostfang, because she can proc it so well in the laning phase, and she does put out a lot of poke damage, that extra damage will matter with her in a lot of situations. But if you think you're just going to get dumpstered in lane, if you know, your ADC picks Ezreal and the enemy ADC picks like Draven and they have Leona or something like that, you can still take coin and just make sure you're going to have a better mid game with like guaranteed wards, better roaming, better income, and stuff like that. But in a lot of situations, you can still take the Frostfang and get some advantages in the lane. Now, the next one that I want to mention here is Blitzcrank. Now, Blitz, a lot of people have him really high on the priority list. He has the highest win rate right now. I don't like him because he's so one-dimensional. You know, if you miss your hook, or if they're just really good at outplaying your hook, or they have good answers to it, then he just doesn't do anything else. You know, he doesn't, like, his gap closer is not that great. It's okay with the speed up. His E is extremely close range, as is his R. So he's very good at doing what he does. You know, if he lands the hook, he one-shots people, kills them, that's awesome. But you just don't have anything else going for you, really. Versus someone like Rakan, you know, he can protect, you know, key targets, and he has really high engage range that's very difficult to outplay because it stays up for so long. So even if they flash it, you can still flash after them with the charm, and a lot of times still make the play. Versus with Blitz, it just doesn't happen as much. And then with Pyke, you know, you have all of the escapes, you have the invisibility, so you can go get those deep wards. Nautilus, you have that guaranteed engage with your old, you know, Leona. You have way more CC than Blitz. So Blitz, you know, he has the hook, he has the heavy damage, but his CC is going to be a lot more limited. His utility is way more limited. So if you land those hooks, you know, consistently, and you're getting a lot of kills and snowballing the game, yes, he's amazing. but I just think that he's a lot riskier than some of the other picks out there. But, I've been actually wanting to try out a Blitzcrank build. I haven't seen a lot of people doing this, but just getting some AP early for something like GLP, so you can apply that slow to people, and it'll make it a lot easier to hit them with the hooks. Because he does have really good AP ratios. He does like a lot of mana, and he does like CDR. So I think that's something that a lot of people don't really check out. Most people will go with something like Zeke's on him, which is okay, but realistically, when you hook them, if you land it, they're probably dead. So the Zeke's not going to matter that much. You need to... Sometimes it's okay to be tanky with him, but realistically, you don't have to go into the fight. You're not Leona, you're not Nautilus, so you get to pick the fight, and you pull them really far out of position all the way over to you. So you really shouldn't be getting hit and blown up that much as Blitzcrank if you're playing him correctly. So I do think that GLP is an option. I might try that out on stream later tonight. I think it sounds pretty fun. But aside from being fun, I do think that it could actually be quite good because, like I said, it's got that utility. The active on GLP is a really short cooldown, like 45 seconds. And, yeah, it's got the mana, it's got the CDR. So he has a lot of potential there, but he's just riskier than other picks. Janna can be good against some of these hard engages. She does have a really high win rate, so she can be good against the Nautilus, the Leona, Rakan, and stuff like that. Just she can be really risky, and she's very vulnerable to getting ganked or all-ins early on. Yes, you do have your Tornado, but if they flash your Tornado and just E onto you with Leona or hook you with Pyke or Nautilus or whatever, you can still get killed. So she does roam fairly well, surprisingly well. She's really fast with her W. She can put up pretty good poke damage early if you go for the popular kind of Comet build with Scorch and then, something like Taste of Blood and Relentless Hunter. She can be fairly aggressive early on, so I haven't had a lot of luck with her, but a lot of people are having luck with her, or making their own luck, rather. They do have a high win rate with her, so maybe I just need to play her a little bit more and get used to her again. She is my most played champion of all time, but I just haven't played her a ton recently, but I can see the potential there. I would play her aggressive if you want to. I would probably still go coin, just because if your AD carry doesn't cooperate with you, at least you still get the extra gold and the wards early. If you have someone who's super aggressive, like a Jhin or Misfortune or Draven, I guess you can still go Spell Thieves, and that can be handy. It's up to you. I could see it either way, but she's a good combination of potential early game aggression, great poke, pretty respectable roaming for an enchanter, but then also scales really well later to be a great anti-engage champion and a great protector, especially if you have a good ranged AD champion, whether that's in the support role or whether that's an AD carry role with the traditional marksman, or whether you have something like a Kindred on your team or a top lane Lucian or top lane Vayne or whatever. Then I think that she could be good. Zyra is still going to be fairly strong. She has great lane domination. It's just outside of the laning phase, she can get outscaled, she can get out roamed, she can get blown up. So I just feel like she's very vulnerable, and it's hard to make plays with her outside of the early game because her E is so slow, it's so predictable, it's very difficult to hit if they see you. So you can really only make plays outside of the bush, and she's very good at that. She's very good at, just one-shotting people who step into bushes when she has vision control. But outside of that, it's just really hard to influence the game. Like, if they're going in onto you, then sometimes you can turn it around, but because most teams aren't running tanks, if they go in, they're going to completely delete whoever they hit with their CC. So if Nautilus hits somebody with his hook, they're probably going to die. Now, yes, you might kill him back, maybe, but he's probably going to be pretty tanky, and your team's already going to be in a situation where they're losing. It's going to be a 4v5. So traditionally, she's been used in the mid and late game as sort of a counter engager. But everyone's just so squishy right now, and games are so snowbally that you just aren't getting a lot of those clean 5v5s where you have a traditional front to back, front line of maybe two champions, and you're trying to protect a back line. So she's all right. If you dominate early, if you get multiple kills in the laning phase, or you really poke them out, she can be very strong, but she is very vulnerable to ganks. She doesn't roam that well. She doesn't have a lot of speed ups. She's extremely vulnerable if she gets caught out by the jungler. So there's a lot of problems with her right now. But if you dominate early, you have that Draven, the Misfortune, the Jhin, the early game champ. You don't have the tier Kai'Sa. Then maybe you can make a play with her. And the final one that I'll talk about here, and I'm definitely going overtime, but is Soraka. So Soraka can be very good right now. She has been buffed several times. Her Q can be really strong if you're landing it consistently. It puts out nice damage. It provides a great heal for you and your ally when you W the ally while the Q is active after you've landed a hit. Her problem is just that, kind of like Zyra, she just doesn't roam very well, and she can't really make proactive plays later on in the game. But if you do have tanks, and I suspect tanks are probably going to come back in the preseason, so that's not this patch but later, but you're still seeing some. You're seeing more Zacs, more Mundos, things like that. Then she can still be very strong, and she does incidentally counter a lot of AoE team comps pretty well. So she's decent into things like Malphite as long as you don't get ulted, because you have that burst healing between, pressing your ult, dropping a redemption, and then just using your spot healing. You can heal through some of these burst magic comps, which can be pretty good. You can be pretty great against other enchanters. So if you're against a Janna or you're against a Nami, she can be really strong. She still does struggle against things like Nautilus and Leona, though, so you have to be careful with that. But I do think that she has a lot of potential. You can't even run Guardian on her to help you against some of those all-in matchups, because Aerie is pretty good early, and let's be real, it's pretty good late. But a lot of times, if you can just stay alive as Soraka, then you're probably going to win the fight, because you put out so much healing later. And that's why she's been taking barrier or so for the last year, is just because you realize if you personally can stay alive, you can probably keep other people alive too. And that's the same process behind why some people are switching over to Guardian on her. So I still think that both Aerie and Guardian can be viable in different situations, but you just kind of have to make the call there. But yeah, some of the best healing in the game, good global presence, so she doesn't physically roam that well because she can get caught out, but her ult gives her an effective, roam in quotes, because she can influence anywhere on the map anytime if that ult's up. So it does give her some pretty good macro pressure. But anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much for tuning in. I definitely didn't get the 15 minutes that I wanted. It ended up taking about 40, but if I run, I'm pretty sure I can still get there on time. But I wanted to get you guys as much content as I possibly could. So once again, not going to have the thumbnail. I'm not going to have the timestamps, but I will hopefully have a link to the Google Doc here for you. And just let me know what you think in the comments, or be sure to drop by the stream if you have some questions, or you want me to explain some things further. I'm more than happy to do that for you, to talk with you during the stream. Like I said, I try to be very conversational. We've got a lot of friendly, very helpful, chill people out there that can give you multiple perspectives on things as well, during the stream. So come by, check it out around 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time pretty much every night. We've had quite a big crowd lately. It's been, in the hundreds, 200s. It even spiked up to 600 last night. So a lot of people are coming in, and I really appreciate that, especially since, my ELO is at about the lowest range that it usually gets. Recently, I was Diamond back in May and June, but we've just been kind of bouncing around in Platinum since then, looking for answers. But we have a good time, and, a lot of people say that just these conversations that I have give them ideas, or, inspire them and give them some new stuff that they can work on, and that they're gaining a lot of ELO. Even if I'm not always gaining a lot of ELO myself, other people say they find sort of the conversations useful. So anyways, come by, check it out. That's going to be it. Thank you very much. Shaco support, I don't have time to talk about it as much right now, but it is gaining some success. I talked about it last video. Just stop by the stream if you want to know more about it, but basically just the AP Shaco did get nerfed a little bit with the boxes this time, but it can still be really good as counter-engage measures with the box. It's free scouting. It does quite a bit of burst damage if you can get the clone on him with the fear in a team fight. So he does have a lot of potential. You just have to practice him. He's a little weird, but he does have potential to be really good. He definitely is for real on this patch if you're well practiced on him. But anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Check out the rest of the content on the channel. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you do enjoy the content. And I'll see you next time. Have a great day.